not exactly the stuff of legends. Or actually, as it turns out, it is. Hello humans, my name is Dael Kingsmill, and today I'm bringing you another myth. Specifically a Norse myth in honor of both this lovely new Neil Gaiman book that my mother bought a signed copy of for me to use, which is so lovely. I hope I'm in focus. And also inspired by, on the MonarchsFactory subreddit, Parasite started a thread of favourite myths and listed this myth as their favourite, so I thought I would do that today. This is the story of Thor and Loki visiting the City of Giants. It's also a story that seems specifically designed to try to catch me out saying the wrong name, so we'll see how we go. On their way to visit the City of Giants, Thor and Loki stopped in at a little farm and said, "Yo, put us up for the night, farmer and farmer family." The husbandman was surprised, but since Thor said that he would provide his own food and share it with the family, he thought, sure, what's the harm? Yeah, we'll see how that goes for you, buddy. In exchange for the lodging that night, Thor took his 2 goats that drove his chariot for him. I'd like to think that they were real big goats, but it seems like in most depictions they're just goats. They're just little goats. Just 2 little goats pulling a chariot. Badass names though. Difficult names for me to say in my Anglo tongue. But let's give it a go, shall we? Tengrisnir, and one that I am told is anglicized as Tangoist. But like a goat doing the tango. Imagine that. Oh, best mental image. Supposedly they translate to teeth bearer and teeth grinder, so that's pretty cool, I guess. That kind of makes up for being just itty bitty goats. Thor took his 2 goats. I got on a tangent there. Thor took his 2 goats and he slaughtered them, and they all cooked up the goats together and made a nice goat meat meal. And as they were eating, Thor laid out the goat's skins on the floor slightly away from the fire and said, "Hey, farm family that we've just dumped ourselves on, how about as you're eating, you throw the bones onto these goat skins?" Cool, fair enough, they all did that. However, the son of the farmer, Thialfi, he had a particular craving for some goat marrow that day, so he split open the thigh bone and sucked on out that marrow. This got super awkward the next day when Thor took the goat skins and threw them over the bones and held his hammer Mjolnir aloft and said, "Up Dasher, up Dancer." No wait, it should of course be "Up Nasher, up Dancer." It gets to still be a dancer because they're a tangoist, right? Right? Alright, fine, the joke is dead. And the 2 goats came back to life, appearing in a halo of glory or something. Oh, except that one of them seemed to be broken. Its back leg was not working. Thialfi, whose name sounds like a portmanteau, like a ship name for YouTubers. Thialfi starts sweating it up something fierce. He's real concerned now because he knows that he done ate that goat's marrow from its leg. Thor is entering a rage. His goat will never dance again. Alright, I'm done with the dancing jokes. I'm done with the tango jokes. I promise. I pinky promise. Ooh, that was my elbow. And in his rage, Thor turned his terrifying eyes on the farmer and the farmer's family. You remember his terrifying eyes, don't you, from that wedding he attended? Terrifying eyes! The family entered a panic and offered Thor anything, everything they owned, if he would just forgive them and not kill them for their crime. Seeing how scared he'd made them, Thor backed down a little bit and said, "Oh, it's okay. I'll just take your kids instead." And so Thialfi and his sister Roskva ended up going on an adventure with Loki and Thor. Or possibly just staying with him forever, like he owns them now. You just replaced the goats with some kids. That's cool. So anyway, now goat chariotless and burdened with 2 small children, Thor and Loki continued on their way. They crossed the sea, they came to land, they found a huge forest in the middle of the wilderness. Thankfully, it turned out that Thialfi was apparently the fastest human being to ever exist. So I mean, that's a handy thing, I guess. And all 4 of them set out to look for some shelter for where they could stay the night. And probably some food too, because they were running out of that. They came across this super weird building. It had no windows, and it was kind of longer than it was wide, but the door was as wide as the building itself. It was like some big weird cave. But of course they decided to set up for the night in there anyway, just sitting in the opening of the cave building whole place. At some point in the middle of the night, there was this huge rumbling. And they all got a little bit freaked, especially the kids, because they're children, human children. And so they went a little deeper into the cave. They found this path that led off to the side a little further in. So they went and they set up in this little tunnel. Thor placed himself at the mouth of the cave, holding Mjolnir up like a baseball bat, ready to conk anything on the head. Come dawn though, Thor was curious as to what the rumblings had all been about, so he wandered out into the forest and he found a giant. Now I feel like in mythology, and particularly in Norse mythology, this term gets bandied about, so we kind of forget how big the giants were. Let's just put it this way. Thor was about to attack whatever this huge snoring, sleeping being was with his hammer, and then it was so big that he had second thoughts and kind of backed down and went, "Ooh, hey buddy, how's it going?" The giant woke up, stood up, towered over Thor and said, "Name's Skrymir. Don't have to tell me who you are. You must be Thor, one of the gods, one of the Aesir, as it were. What would you say to traveling together? How about that? How about that?" Thor was like, yeah, sure. Sure, sounds good. By that evening, Skrymir said, "Hey, how about we put all our food together, we rest under this oak tree, and we can share the food whenever you're ready to have supper." And they put all the food together and he tied it up in this bag, and then he said, "You know what, actually I'm pretty tired. I'm gonna go to bed for the night. I'm gonna turn in. You guys do whatever the hell you want." So Skrymir went and fell asleep, and Thor tried to open the provision bag so that he and his allies could get some to eat, but he couldn't undo it. The knots were just done up way too tight for him. Thor was not used to being beaten in tests of strength, so he stood there for ages trying to pry it apart and couldn't do a damn thing until he got so angry about it that he took up his hammer and he went over and he cracked Skrymir on the head. Skrymir's eyes opened and he said, "Did something just fall? Did a leaf just fall on my head?" Later, when he could hear that Skrymir had fallen asleep again, Thor had another crack at it. He took up Mjolnir, took a bit of a run up, and whack! Hit him on the head again. And Skrymir woke up again and said, What is it now? Acorns? What's going on?" Later still, when it's just before dawn, and Thor is certain that Skrymir has fallen asleep once again, he has a third and final try to pop this giant's head while he's sleeping. It's very courageous of you, Thor. Strength of character. Great. Very worthy of you. Thor trots over and he gives it the biggest swing that he could manage. Mjolnir drops down on the temple of the giant, now sleeping on his side, and Skrymir wakes up, stands up, and says, "Look, I must have been sleeping under, like, a bird's nest or something all night. Things just keep on dropping on me. It's bright and early. You must have just woken up, ready for a full day's travel, yeah?" "Yes." "As for me, I'm headed in the other direction. It's been great." And he takes up the bag full of food that Thor hadn't been able to open, and he leaves them. So long, Skrymir. Thor notably did not wish him Godspeed. Later that day, when Thor's crew make it to the City of Giants, they try to get the attention of the king. And this is where the confusing names really start to kick in, because the king's name is Utgard Loki. "Hi, excuse me. No? Oh. We'll just be right here." The king took his sweet time in noticing the travelers, but eventually said, "Look, it's not exactly my thing to just welcome anyone to come and eat with us. You gotta prove that you're worthy. What can you do? Show me what you can do that would make you worthy of sitting at my table." Loki is the first to speak up. He says, "Oh, Utgard Loki, I will guarantee you that I can eat my food faster than anyone you know." It's a weird and unexpected challenge for Loki to put forth, but okay. Utgard Loki says, "Sure thing," and he calls out a member of his court, Logi, because of course his name is Loki. Loki and Logi are sat down by Utgard Loki at this trough filled with meat. One of them is sat at either end, and they eat as quickly as they can, shoveling food into their mouths until they meet in the middle. Loki had, of course, finished all of his meal very, very quickly, and he was feeling pretty good about his chances until he looked over and realized that Loki had eaten all of his food just as quickly, as well as the trough and the bones. So all of the bystanders decided that Loki and not Loki had won the first challenge. Then it was Thialfi's turn to prove himself. Fastest of all humans, he said, "I will beat anyone in a race." So Utgard Loki called forth Hugi, who was so much faster in the race than Thialfi that he would hit the finish line and then come back to beat Thialfi again, just to really rub it in, you know. Thor said, "I will of course totally destroy any drinking challenge you put in front of me." "Alright," said Utgard Loki, "bring forth the drinking horn. The drinking horn was giant-sized, although Thor noted that it wasn't as big as he thought it would be. It was just really, really long. So long, he couldn't see the end of it, but sure, drinking's his thing, he'll totally manage it. Thor wasn't worried, he went for it, but of course, very quickly lost his breath. He leaned back to see what the level of the drink was at now in the drinking horn, and it looked like it had barely changed. Oh, it's fine, said Utgard Loki. You'll still be worthy if you can finish it in the second draft. So Thor had another go, and it seemed like he made even less of a dent on it this time. What the hell was going on? Then, because this is mythology and it's kind of how they do things, Roskva was completely ignored and not given a challenge. Instead, Thor attempted a second challenge, saying, alright, all you are laughing at me, you guys are laughing at me because I didn't finish that drink. I will wrestle any of you. I will wrestle you to the ground. Come fight me. Fight me. Ow. And Utgard Loki said, oof, this is embarrassing. Alright, bring out my old nanny. Bring out the old lady giant. She'll wrestle you. And so out came the old woman Ellie. And the harder that Thor tried to wrestle her to the ground, the less she budged. Until eventually she made a fancy wrestling maneuver back on him and Thor was bent to one knee. Defeated again. This whole trip had just been one gigantic bruise on Thor's ego, I'm telling you. Alright, Utgard Loki said that he'd take pity. He would invite the whole group if Thor could manage one simple task. Just lift up my cat. A fun pastime among the giants of his court to try and lift his grey cat, who very conveniently leapt into the room at that moment. So Thor got straight into it. He went over to that cat and he lifted the hell out of it. Or he tried. He got his hand under its belly and tried to lift, but the cat arched its back as far away from Thor's hand as it could. And Thor just kept pulling and pulling and lifting his hands as high as he could, as high as he could. The cat was so heavy, you guys. Finally, he managed to get it to lift 1 foot off the ground in a big jolt of his last surge of strength. And the whole room cheered and said, all right, you know what, you put in a good effort. We'll let you stay. So Thor and his crew ate for the rest of the night, stayed with the giants in the giant city, but got ready to leave bright and early the next morning, pretty embarrassed about what had happened the night before. As they were leaving, King Utgard Loki decided to come and take Thor aside and let him know something. Hey, Thor, buddy, here's the thing. Turns out I'm Skymir. You terrified me. So while I was freaked out, I decided to cast some illusions on you. You know that bag that you couldn't untie? That was actually fastened with iron, not rope. You did almost kill me with Mjolnir a number of times, except I tricked you into thinking that what was my head was a hill and what was my hill was a head. I just confused myself. You get it. Loki, the guy that beat Loki in that eating contest, yeah, that's actually Wildfire. He devours everything. That guy that beat Thialfi in the race is actually Huvi. He's Thought, the embodiment of Thought, so yeah, never gonna win that race. That drinking horn actually stretched into the ocean. That's what you were drinking. You'll probably see that you've depleted it quite a bit when you go to head back home over the sea. That old woman you wrestled is old age, so we were all really impressed that you only bent 1 knee to her. And that cat, not a cat, actually the Midgard serpent. You know, the one that wraps around the whole world? Yep, pretty heavy. So since you did manage to lift one of its feet off the ground, we're terrified of you. We never want to see you again, so go away. Thor was enraged. He lifted his hammer and turned to strike at Utgard Loki / Skymir, but the giant had completely vanished. And when he turned to instead destroy the city in his rage, the city too had disappeared, and the whole group of gods and children that they had taken from their family had to just let it all go. So that's the story of Thor's visit to the giant city. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, you've got the things, you know how YouTube works. If you would like to share what your favorite myth is on the subreddit, you can go to reddit.com/r/MonarchsFactory. I make lots of videos here. Plenty of them are like this one, mythology, fairy tales, etc. If you would like to support the making of those, I have a Patreon. The link is in the description below. Apart from that, I think that's it. I'm done. Email this to your grandma and I will see you some other time. I bit my tongue. Ow. Tail, I insulted Thor and I've brought down his wrath upon us. I missed the worst of the hail. Oh, whoa, jeez. Oh my goodness. This is a lot of rain, this is a lot of hail, this is a lot of thunder and lightning. Ah, this is the first real summer storm we've had in a while. This isn't even showing clearly enough how deep the water on the road is, how huge the splashes from the hail. Whoa! You hear that thunder? I hope you can hear that thunder. Soz Thor, you're not weak. The cat just turned out to be the Midgard worm, it's alright.